Today, we welcomed Mel Dorman to the show. She's a financial activist and a real estate coach. She's a TEDx speaker and the author of Bank on Your Neighbor. We talked about seller financing. What the heck is that? Mel is going to tell you. We talked about smashing the patriarchy and building community. And we talked about Leonardo DiCaprio because we are millennials after all.
We're excited to have you on the show. Part of why we wanted to talk to you is that I think you have a super interesting story. I listened to your TED Talk. You have some cool content out there on TikTok. I mean, my first question is really around, you had $500. You said you were dumpster diving, and then all of a sudden, fast forward a few years later, and you're dealing with a multimillion-dollar portfolio, which I find amazing. So give us your background. Walk us through that story.
Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty wild. So I used to be a humanitarian and a social worker in my early 20s. So I lived in India in a slum and helped women out of sex trafficking to, helping homeless youth in Hollywood get off the streets and into a permanent supportive housing. So I've had a really interesting career as a humanitarian. But the reason I made a big shift into becoming a real estate mogul was that actually my family had a financial crisis. My dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's when I was 23 years old. And we were a typical blue-collar, middle-class family living paycheck to paycheck. And it was a big wake-up call when the doctors told us it would cost us $7,000 a month for the care that he needed as his disease progressed. And so at the time, I was just a social worker working in LA County Jail. And I just started Googling how to build wealth. And it led me to real estate. And I rapidly learned everything I could. I mean, I was reading all the top books and podcasts and everything for about a year, saving up for my first down payment. And I was just dedicated to trying to solve this problem for my family. And unfortunately, my dad ended up passing away right after I bought my first property. But that moment really was the catalyst to me switching from being a social worker to becoming a real estate entrepreneur and now financial activist. And so I just dedicated myself. When my dad passed away, I just said, I will never let this happen to me or anybody else I love again. I'm going to learn how money works, and I'm going to teach as many people who are willing to listen. And so I'm on that second half of the journey now, just trying to educate people and help them gain financial freedom.
That's amazing. Can you talk to us a little bit about it sounds like there was a financial catalyst for it. And then I also have a similar situation where it was you grow up a certain way and there's no way in hell that's ever going to happen again. And so you kind of changed the story. But I'm curious, how did you do it? Tactically, what were the steps that got you there?
Yeah, so my TED Talk, is labeled How to Turn $500 into Six-Figure Financial Freedom. And really that story started, I sent out direct mail, which I like to call love letters. I just started reaching out to my community and starting relationships and asking them, once I got, face-to-face, just basically asking them what their plans were for the property and trying to create a mutually beneficial relationship where I would pay them every month instead of getting a bank loan. And what this partnership would create was financial freedom for them as they were able to retire and downsize and stop being a landlord. And then I got to move into their spot, being the landlord, taking care of the property and just paying them mailbox money every month. So I really got my first start. I learned about seller financing right after my dad passed away at a boot camp. Learned everything I needed to know there. And then I just hit the ground running, sending out mail, cold calling people, that sort of thing. And one day I stumbled into a conversation with this guy named Kelly, who was a bankruptcy attorney. And I was actually looking for his client, but turns out his client was dead. So a little bit of an awkward start, but a really great meet cute story for Kelly and I. And a few months into the friendship with him, he sent me a text and said, hey, I got a triplex I want to sell. Could you tell me the value? And I was like a brand new realtor, hardly knew anything, but I could figure out the value. So I met with him at the property. And before I could even say anything to him, he said to me, I'd really like to seller finance this to somebody. And I was not bank lendable anymore. I'd quit my job as a social worker. This wasn't 2007. Nobody was going to give me a loan. So I had to do seller financing if I was going to continue to build my portfolio after that first purchase. And so I basically said, well, why don't you sell it to me, seller financed? And so that night we just went to a bar and we worked out the details together. And, long story short, I ended up buying his triplex with just $500 out of pocket. And the way that we structured it, at first he wanted $75,000 down.
Of course.
But I had no money in my checking account, like $16,000, right? I just quit my job. I was trying to live off that money. So just quick on my feet, I was like, well, what would it cost for you to foreclose on me? Because that's really the risk for the seller, right? And in Oregon, it's just $15,000. So I said, well, great. Why don't we make that the down payment? If I don't pay you, you can use my own money to foreclose on me. And so he agreed. But of course, I didn't have that money either. So I ended up calling a bunch of friends, and this lesbian couple out of LA who I'd known for a long time, they loaned me $10,000. So between their $10,000 and my $5,000 for the down payment and $2,000 for the closing cost, I was able to purchase that building. And then at the closing table, I basically told Kelly, like, hey, 2 of the units are vacant. So how in the world am I going to pay you when I have no money coming in? And so with seller financing, you can really negotiate everything. And so we just set the first payment 2 months out, so I wouldn't have to owe any money for a little while. And I leased up those units, and I recouped $6,500 of my $7,000, which meant I was all in $500 on a triplex in a great part of the city. Still cash flowing today, and it was cash flowing day one. So it was really about learning how to do finance and to find people and help them solve their problems in a creative way that created like a mutually beneficial partnership. And that's how I got my start.
Okay, so we need to call dead people by accident and get in touch with people who own apartment buildings. And then we need to call our lesbian friends who can lend us 10 grand. And we are rolling.
Yep.
LLC.
Yeah, you got the playbook right there.
LLC.
No, I love this, and it makes so much sense to me, but I have a skeptic brain. I'm a Virgo.
Yeah.
When I think about this, I'm like, yeah, this sounds doable, but is it just you? As you sound like a great salesperson, like you could charm the shit out of anybody. Is it unique to your personality, or is this something that actual everyday people can touch? Is it achievable for the normal person?
Yeah, it is. In fact, I've been proving that for the last few years as I've developed what's called the Seller Financing Academy. And I've had students come through, and just within a few weeks of sending what I like to call love letters out, they're in conversations with folks and they're sitting in their living rooms. For instance, my girlfriend joined the program this year, and she, sent out her first 100 pieces of letter. She hand signed them, put love into them, all those sorts of things. And within about 2 weeks, she was in conversations with a woman named Sylvia. Now, Sylvia was a realtor for a long time. She used to actually do classes on seller financing, so she's a perfect candidate for it. And she had already sold 2 of her 8 properties seller financed. So she was just ready to go. And now they're working out a deal for Robin, my partner, to buy 2 of those. So that's somebody who didn't know anything about seller financing 6 months ago and, is already doing their first deals. So it is very accessible, and it's just rooted in relationship. You don't need a lot of money. You don't need a perfect credit score. I didn't even have a job when I got started. I just was rooted in building these relationships with folks and structuring it in such a way that it was, beneficial for them.
You know what? We should actually have you. What is the most basic way? Because a lot of people don't know what seller financing is. What is the most, like if you were trying to tell my 8-year-old son, this is what seller financing is, how would you define that for him?
Yeah, so most of the time people think that you need to go to a bank in order to buy your home or your property, and the bank gives you a big sum of money, and that's what you use to purchase it. And then for 30 years or however long you pay the bank, you send them payments every month, and that's how most people think that it goes. But there's an alternative to that we've been doing before banks got involved, which is called seller financing. And it's when a homeowner and a buyer work directly together, and the buyer just pays them in installment payments, just little small payments every month until they've either paid it off or sold it or whatnot. And what this does is it means that everything is negotiable. So the interest rate, you can choose the interest rate with your neighbor. You can choose the price. You can choose when the first payment is due. Everything is just a conversation. And what's really beautiful about this is when we do this collectively, we start to redistribute wealth away from Wall Street or big banks and financial institutions back into our communities. And so all of that wealth stays local, which is why it's so important.
It feels so straightforward, but it's kind of like, why don't we know about this, and why aren't these accessible to like everybody? But I guess you're trying to solve that problem.
Because most of us are just following the rules, right? We're getting the mortgage, getting the job, not thinking that we can own real estate. And Mel's not following the rules.
I'm not a rule follower.
Okay, so tell us more. I want to pivot a little bit, because a lot of your content and what, Laura and I bitch all the time about the patriarchy holding us down. Talk to us a little bit about that. Like, how did you start seeing the themes that you talk about in your content? Give us an idea of your journey.
Yeah, so in college, I was actually a sociology major, and it really changed my life because I started to see the world not as this interdependent thing that like nobody is really connected, but actually that we're all deeply connected to one another, and there are systems of oppression that are in place. And really at the heart of my mission is to help people see that the way we've been doing things, while it's very normalized, is actually very extractive, because the homeowner basically gives their asset to the bank and the bank monetizes it at the time of sale. And so that means the bank makes hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest over the course of the loan, versus a homeowner who has spent years paying off that debt. They don't get that. And so it's really important that people understand they have a choice between these two things. And it is pretty simple. It's about a 5-page document. Like, it's when you sign a mortgage, it's like 30, 40 pages. And so what's really powerful about this is it's person to person. It's simple. Of course, you have professionals involved. This isn't the Wild West. You can have a realtor and an attorney, and everybody can sort of be involved in, helping you through the process. But this is really how we used to do it, and it's how we can return to doing it. And it would really change the face of wealth in our nation if we preserve more community wealth.
I think that's probably a big concern for people, this fear of, well, if the bank isn't the one being in charge of the money, right?
Yeah, and kind of to go back to your question about, the patriarchy, how does that fit in? Women weren't allowed to have access to capital to have a bank loan until 1974. This is not, this is not hundreds of years ago. This is a few decades ago that women were able to purchase a home on their own or get a credit card. And even at that time, they would have to use their husband to get the loan, and their own income was cut in half. So lenders would give them about half as much as they'd give a man. And so it's, real estate acquisition and our history in our nation, these things are very entrenched in patriarchy. And it's so recent that women even have the ability to own property, and wealth and power and owning property is how we change the patriarchy, because wealth and power are at the core of these power dynamics between men and women. And
yes, queen.
So I'm like, if you want to change patriarchy, go buy the building, go control the assets. Right now, 97.5% of all assets are under the control of white men. And 50% of that is white men with the same first 25 first names. So basically,
Michael, John. We can name them.
And can all fit on a group text. And this is who is controlling the assets in our nation. And I'm a big advocate, like, let's switch the face of wealth. And I believe if queer and women and people who are on the margins had access to buying property, that they would do different things with their wealth.
I have a suspicion, given the state of our country and some of the politics that are happening and suppressing the progress that we've made over the last 40, 50 years.
Just a little.
Just a tiny bit. I mean, our marriages are now in question again, which is a whole other story. But I don't know if you've seen any of the content with, like, I don't even know if it's bro culture, trad wives, but the man should now be making the voting decisions for the household and really trying to take a hard pivot to remove rights from women again. It seems like we're at this really interesting point where we're completely uphill again, where it seems achievable, but either do it now before it gets taken away.
Yeah, I mean, it's never been harder to own a home in America. Between the interest rates and the prices and the affordability index and how much millennials and Gen Z are just laden with student debt, it has never been harder to own a home. And what most people don't realize is homeowners have 40 times more wealth than tenants, and which is why it's so important that every person have the ability to purchase their own home so that we can build safety nets and security. It's not about becoming super wealthy. It's about being able to take care of yourself at the end of your life. And so seller financing bridges that gap between the high interest rates and high prices and allows people to form partnerships that work, that cash flow. So I think it's just super important to educate people that there is an alternative to what the banks tell you have to do.
I'm fired up, Erica. Do you want to go in on a building?
I mean, let's do it if you manage it.
I am picking up what you're putting down. It's also interesting, you said earlier, was it 1974 that you said women had the ability to, purchase their own home? It's this other conversation that's going on right now of like, why are there more gay people than ever before? And it's like, well, there aren't. It's just my wife and I in the past wouldn't be able to own a home and start a family because that wasn't legally feasible. So people are finally living the lives that they want to live. And now there's pushback against that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, I get a lot of flack too from folks who are like, why would you ever want to be a landlord? Right? Like, that sounds like you become the man. You're the bad guy then. But I think people don't realize that, in 2022, 1 in 7 homes was bought by private equity firms, and corporations are buying up our neighborhoods rapidly. They're playing monopoly with our neighborhoods. And it's so important that local people own local properties, because I can tell you as a landlord myself, when my tenants lose their job, I'm not evicting them. I'm helping them find a new job. I'm helping them talk with co-signers. I'm helping them get back on track. And that's not what a hedge fund's going to do. They're just going to immediately serve a notice and kick somebody out. And so we need local landlords to be advocates so that we can keep people in secure housing. People always need housing. All the fundamentals are very simple. You're not having to reinvent a wheel or come up with a product. You're just supplying housing, which has been around forever. And so I advocate for this model because it's one of the easiest businesses to own and run, and it's completely relational. And so you can actually talk to the person you're working with and help them versus, trying to come up with a product or something like that can be very challenging for an average person. And home ownership is the staple of American wealth. That's where we keep our wealth, is in our homes. And I think there's been this sort of like, throw your hands in the air. We can't afford this anymore. Let's just, take this other route. But that other route feeds the beast. And it's really pulling us out of this, what's called a stakeholder version of capitalism. So the reason why wealth disparity has grown so much in our nation, according to Robert Reich, the economist, is that we've moved from a stakeholder version of capitalism, which think like mom and pop shops. They care about their customers, their suppliers, their employees. They're connected to the people that they're making business decisions with and about, right? So seller financing is great because it's person to person. It's returning to that stakeholder economy. And that's why it works, is because people actually care about one another.
Interesting. I want to believe that so bad, that we care about each other in our community.
And me, the biggest skeptic ever, I'm feeling radicalized. If I had 2 pennies to rub together, I would be writing love letters.
I think write the love letters. And if we find somebody, then I can figure out a way to finance it.
So for seller financing, the seller has to own it outright, correct?
Yeah, or they need to have a lot of equity. So This is a really, really good point to make on this podcast. So the way that seller financing works is you're paying the person back their equity that they own. And so I roughly say at least 40% equity is needed so that the numbers make sense. So you have some financing that you can kind of manipulate so it works for both parties. But, not everybody owns that. They don't own their house outright, that sort of thing. So you do have to look for folks. And so I recommend partnering with a local escrow company and getting a list of folks who do own the house or their property outright so that you're having those productive conversations. But another thing that you can do, like let's say they don't own it, they own 50% of it. You can get a bank loan for the first half of it. Let's say it's $1 million building. You get a loan for $500,000 from the bank. Well, all of a sudden your closing costs go down. The amount that you have to put down goes to half of that. All these factors, the capital required to do the deal goes down too. And so they don't have to own it outright. You can, trade one bank loan for another bank loan for the underlying mortgage. But whatever they do own is what they can finance to you. And that's where the power comes in.
Got it.
You really did learn all this.
Yeah. That's my full-time gig right now, teaching people.
Is there a minimum interest rate that you have for the Fed to recognize like it's a real deal? Like, how does that work? How do you get around that?
Yeah, I actually have a really great case study for this. There is a federal minimum, and if you don't offer it, you do have to pay the taxes on giving less. But
see, I didn't even think of that. Go on.
Yeah, it changes. I think it's like 4 or 5% right now. You can look it up, but you don't have to follow that. It just means that when you do the taxes, you're going to have to account for it. For example, I had this really amazing story about 3 or 4 months ago. I was on a listing appointment with a woman who had inherited a duplex and a triplex from her mom who had passed away. And I told her, hey, you can sell this duplex for like $550. And she said, yeah, I think so too. And I said, well, how would you like to sell it for $610? She was intrigued. And I said, well, if you offered financing with this property, then there'd be a lot more buyers that could buy it. And if you did interest only payments versus amortized payments, then the buyer's payment would be less than what a bank could offer. We could undercut the competition. And she said, well, she's already familiar with seller financing. Her dad sold a grocery store when she was younger that way. So she knew the concept. And she said, I actually know who could buy this, which was the tenant. He had been a doctor. He made $350 a year. But his problem was that he was Muslim and he couldn't pay interest because of his religion. So I just called up
wow.
Abdul and I said, "Hey, Abdul, would you like to pay a 0% interest loan?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so I just said, "How long would you like to pay this off for?" And he said 7 years. And I just got on a calculator, added that to the purchase price. And Cynthia, my client, ended up selling it for $725 instead of $550. And that's now her retirement. She makes about $8,000 a month. And then Abdul, the tenant, now owns it. And he moved his mother-in-law into the downstairs unit. And so now they can, as a family, walk to the mosque each week. So you don't have to have any interest if you don't want to, if it works for both parties.
Very interesting.
We're learning.
Okay, so we've been chatting for a little bit. I think this is a fascinating conversation. I think it's enlightening for a lot of folks, especially we're of the middle-aged women, queer women genre adjacent. We love our straight women too. They're invited to the team.
Shout out, they're fine.
And some guys, but our target audience is probably not them.
I know my sister was like, "I really want to listen to your podcast." I'm like, "Well, you are allowed, even if you have a husband."
It's okay.
She's like, "I think I'm your target audience, except for the gay part."
What else do you do? Do you give back to the community? Like, you've had this amazing trajectory with your career. Was there something that you're really passionate about outside of real estate that has to do with the queer community?
Yeah, I mean, the population I'm trying to reach are queer folks and people of color and women. That's really my target audience to bring this message to, because the bro culture doesn't speak to them. And it's really totally out of alignment. You know, most of the real estate genre is the message is go find somebody who's down and out, take advantage of them, offer them a really low price, flip the property, gentrify the neighborhood, make a quick profit, right? That's like the general theme of real estate investing if you go to most seminars. But what I'm teaching is absolutely different. I'm teaching people to go out in their community, find somebody who's responsible, who's paid off their property, who's probably a landlord, and then just take over the role of landlord and pay them every month and create these mutually beneficial relationships. So it's totally different. And in terms of what I do for the community, I have a top realtor team too that I run, and we donate to a local organization called the African American Alliance for Housing. And so that's teaching folks how to get into housing, giving them financial literacy, and then helping them through the process so that they can keep the home long term. And so that's one of the organizations that I partner with. But really, this is my mission. Like I'm bringing financial literacy to folks who don't usually get it in a language and an understanding that aligns with their values and my values. So this is kind of my full drive is to help people learn this.
Here's some fun questions. Let's get silly.
It's called Queer Quickies. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Little rapid fire. So we're going to put you on the spot. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Oh, gosh, Leonardo DiCaprio. And I don't know
Nice.
why. I'm obviously queer, but if that man asked me, I would say yes.
I mean, in his younger days, he was a little femme, so I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was trying to become him in retrospect, but
Yeah.
I definitely thought about him a lot as a 10 to 25-year-old.
I
Totally
mean,
get it.
anybody in a certain age group, there was no way around Leo.
I know. But what about now? Leo now. You have to be 6'2" and a supermodel.
And 19 years old.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to go for me. I mean, I don't have the right angle.
Next one. What is the first queer bar you ever went to?
Oh my gosh. It's been so long. There's like some really cool queer bar in Hollywood that I know I went to that had like a lesbian night that I cannot recall off the top of my head, but I just remember my purse was stolen, so that was fun.
Oh, no.
Sounds about right.
It tracks. I know. Okay. What's one stereotype about queer women you secretly love?
Oh, I think I love that we U-Haul.
Same.
We're just like, let's figure this out right now.
It's like quality decision making. You know, there's no wavering, there's no games. Let's do this. I love it.
All in.
Okay, great. What's your queer superpower?
Ooh, okay. My queer superpower. I think my queer superpower is I'm constantly keeping people guessing whether I'm a boy or a girl.
Do you get the bathroom looks? I get them all the time.
All the time. And I love it because it really makes them question their perception and really think outside the box. I'm just like a walking quiz.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that superpower.
Okay. And last but not least, what makes you go from zero to unhinged?
Ooh, zero to unhinged. When I see somebody being mistreated, I am very quick to jump into the conversation. And not that I'm like mean or yelling, but I just intervene and I'm like, I don't think that's going to get what you want. Like, why don't we have a more reasonable conversation that's respectful? I will jump like 0 to 60, like, let's shut that down because I just don't like to see people get abused.
I love it.
I need you to come to my house and break up all the fights between my kids, me and my kids, me and my wife.
Yeah, such a good question.
Oh, that's great. Is there anything else that you'd love to share before we kind of wrap things up?
Yeah, I'd just love to share, my book just came out, Bank on Your Neighbor, which is really a comprehensive guide, start to finish, on how to go out in your community and build these relationships. It's on Amazon, but you go to my website, meldorman.com. You can also get it for free, also on my socials, anywhere. I'm not selling books. I'm starting a movement. So, on Amazon, it's at cost. I'm not making any dollars. Like, it is literally just for informing the public of how to do this. And for those who are like, oh my gosh, I want to learn more, I really want to jump into this, I'd like to coach, I started the Seller Financing Academy to walk people through this process, start to finish, with a whole year of support. So anybody who's like, oh my gosh, I got to do this, I want to learn more, start with the book or jump on a call with me and we can talk about that program.
I love that. That's
amazing.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, I feel more enlightened than I did.
I do too. I believe in the movement. And
she's going to pressure me now. So we're going to have to, we'll be your like New York chapter. We'll do that.
Yeah. You just need $500, get started.
Let's take over the world. Let's do this.
Just need $500 to get started.
I love it. So I'm down. Yeah. Let's do it.
We want to retain our rights, but get like more small town community. That's another thing too. What did you say? You're a financial activist?
Yeah, financial activist.
Yeah, I think about activism and I feel like it took me longer than it should have in life to learn that, like, vote local, start local. Yeah, the bigger picture and the big stuff matters too, but also what's going on in your community that's actually really impacting your day to day. Like, these are major moves.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like, you really want to make America great again, then return to community and help one another. Not about instilling racist or homophobic policies. It's about coming back together and doing mutual aid and cutting out the billionaire class.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Mel, thank you so much. Thanks to Mel Dorman for teaching us about seller financing, and thanks to you for listening to Unseen, Queer Millennial Life Unfiltered. Don't forget to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Pink Robin. Follow us on social media at Pink Robin Shop.